Thank you. We can all agree on the importance of the East Asia Pacific region. It's a diverse and dynamic region. We've seen significant progress there politically. We've seen democracy in Burma or Myanmar move forward. But keep in mind, democracy is not touted as a system that necessarily protects minority rights. And the Rohingya continue to suffer, whether it is from the military or even from some of the democratic leaders in Myanmar, Burma. The economic progress has been more than significant. World Bank says extreme poverty in the region has dropped from 29% in 2002 to 4% in 2014. While we all agree that the region is important, I think we're going down the wrong path because we're being war hawks about some islets that remain uninhabited to this day. That's how useless they are. And we're incredibly doves when it comes to jobs for the American people. You would think that the American government might have lost touch with the citizens it claims to represent, which I think is obvious to anyone looking at our current political system. Looking first at these maritime disputes, we have to be careful about how we deploy our limited resources. Pivot to Asia should mean we send a trade delegation to Tokyo to say we've got to deal with this trade deficit, rather than sending aircraft carriers to defend islets for Japan that they are unwilling to defend at their own cost. Let's look at these islets. There's no oil. If there was any oil, it's not our oil. And the countries who say that it would be their oil are unwilling to increase their defense budgets, but are banking on their ability to redirect our defense budget, because while our defense budget may not increase, our allocation of it to protect their islets, which have their oil but there is no oil, is their best investment. And Japan, for example, continues to have a 1% GDP ceiling on what they spend for their own defense. And the chairman brings up the trade agreement, as our witnesses do in their opening statement. This is a trade agreement so manifestly against American interests that everyone running for president swears they're against it, even those who may think otherwise. The American people will see this agreement become law only through chicanery and trickery, like ratification during a lame duck session. I hope that we can put enough light on this so that we get not only ask candidates for president where do they stand on it, but we get a clear statement from every candidate for president. Will they withdraw from it if chicanery is used to ratify it during the month of December of this year? Why is this agreement is so terrible for American working families that it's being sold as good national security policy? Suffer for your country needs you. This is terrible national security policy. First, it is a Trojan horse for China to bring its imports into the United States. Goods that are admitted to be 60% made in China, in reality 80 or 90% made in China, get fast-tracked in the United States with no supervision and no tariff. A one-way free trade agreement for China. Second, this deal puts the U.S. government stamp of approval on the idea that trade agreements don't control currency manipulation. So the idea that we should be so proud that we wrote the rules, no, these are Wall Street's rules that have mutilated the American middle class. We shouldn't be proud for passing them. And oh, by the way, the one rule China wanted, we wrote for them, even though they didn't even have to show up for the negotiations. And the key thing, the most important part of this agreement, is the part that's not in it. Nothing on currency manipulation. As to North Korea, we clearly have a problem. What worries me most is that North Korea will sell fissile material or a nuclear weapon. In 2007, Israel destroyed a nuclear facility, a nuclear bomb facility in Syria. What is less well known is that that was all North Korean equipment and technology. North Korea was only willing to sell technology and equipment in 2007 because they didn't have very many weapons and they needed nuclear weapons in their own belief to defend themselves from us. They now have 12 nuclear weapons. They'll be developing 3 a year, or at least enough fissile material for 3 a year. I don't know whether the next one goes on eBay, but I do know that the amount North Korea would demand would exceed the resources of ISIS or any other terrorist non-state actor. But Iran and other state actors would have enough money to really interest the North Koreans. Finally, as Washington warned us, we have to avoid the tendency of many countries to go looking for dragons to slay. Funny that he used the term dragon. Looking for enemies we don't need. China has domestic political problems, so they fan nationalism over islets. We do the same thing, perhaps for our own political reasons. We're told that these islets, for example, sit astride trade routes involving hundreds of billions of dollars of trade. Yes, it's all trade in and out of Chinese ports, and if China had military control of these islands, they could blockade their own ports. So we exaggerate the importance of these islets in order to meet domestic political needs. What the Pentagon needs politically most is a worthy adversary. They don't like focusing their attention on non-uniformed, asymmetrical opponents. China offers the only hope of a worthy, uniformed opponent. We don't need another opponent. We need to calm down and realize these islets are islets that remained uninhabited even though they're off the coast of the most populated continent for a reason. And I realize that our hearing today is about the State Department and USAID budget, but the Pentagon budget follows foreign policy, or at least it should. And that is the big budget we've got to worry about. I yield back.
We're grateful to be joined today by Assistant Secretary Daniel Russell of the Department of the State's Bureau